Hello everyone, I'm Alexander Teitlin, and this is the Lockdown Lecture Series for Intermediate Violin, borrowed from the Alias Music Foundations course and adapted for the classroom setting. Let's jump into Lesson 4. So last week we did shaping work for the first movement, and we assigned accuracy work for the second and third movement. So let's play through that together, and if you guys can keep up, that means your work is done and we can work on quality things for the second and third movement. So here we go. Let's play in a moderate tempo from the second to the third movement. 1 and 2. Going on, skip the rest, and so that's kind of what we're looking for the second and third movement. Make sure it's with the metronome, make sure you have memorized it, make sure your bowings are correct. Now, let's take a look at quality work for this movement. If you guys have all that done, you're ready to go on the quality work. Now, the interesting thing about quality work is it's not always the same for each piece. Like, for example, in our first movement, the vibrato was really important. Our sound was important, the quality of our sound itself, but our articulation was not at all important. It's just long bows. In this movement, it's good to have good sound, but articulation is crucial. That is actually most of the work. There's not too much vibrato because the notes go by pretty quickly. So let's talk about how to figure out some of the articulation work. Now, this piece has some detailed markings for articulations. There are staccato marks, for example, tenuto marks, but even the most detailed composers cannot give you enough detail work or detail markings for you to figure out exactly what to do for your articulation. There are so many different kinds. If you talk about just the simple markings, you really just have staccato, legato, and maybe détaché with no markings. Composers can add extra markings like spiccato and sautille and marcato, but even that's not very many. Even if you look at just the basic kinds of staccato, there are so many different ways to do it. There are at least dozens, if not hundreds of different ways that you can do staccato. So the best way to figure out exactly what you want is to listen to great recordings and to work with a teacher who can interpret the music for you. So this particular movement requires this kind of staccato stroke. So as you can tell, I'm sort of doing like a circle crescendo lift on every note, and I'm not striking the string very hard, a little bit. I think essentially this creates this lifting energy on every single note. And what we learn is that the energy of a piece really comes from its articulation, not just the speed. If I just play it fast, of course, it'll have more energy. But if I can create the energy with my articulation, then I add the speed, I have a spectacular sounding piece. I know many beginners, early intermediates, might take a piece like this and end up playing it something like this. I mean, technically I'm doing staccato, I'm stopping between every note, but really it sounds more like this. Creates so much more life and energy in the piece. So let's talk about how to work on that. So we need to be able to do this shape, first of all, in any tempo. So we want to slow down as much as we can and have this light landing, crescendo lift in the lower part of the bow where we get good sound and good control with our fingers. So it should look like this. In a slow tempo. Now if you need to slow down this slow to get back to the frog, crescendo lift, then go as slow as you need to. Once you find your slow tempo, you might know your notes, but this is for knowing your articulation. You can then either work it up with a metronome or just arbitrarily pick faster tempos to work up your speed. Now, once you have worked up your speed, it should sound something more like this in a moderate tempo. So you notice I do that articulation on every staccato note. I don't let any of them be kind of droopy. Every single one has that same crispy shape. And in full tempo, it would sound like this. Right? So it gives us a lot of like life and energy in the piece. And if I look at the third movement, I have one additional mark. I have these tenuto marks right here, followed by a staccato mark. And it kind of fits in because this piece, the third movement does not start on the pickup, it starts on the beat. It sounds like this. Right? So you kind of land a smooth note and then crescendo lift. So you want to practice that motion by itself. Here's what it sounds like slowly. And there are even details as far as phrasing goes, or the weight of each articulation in the recording. So study the recording, carefully work up your tempo. So that's our detail work for our second and third movement, our quality work. Once you have your articulation done, you can add vibrato to your longer notes. For example, the last few notes of section A1 and A2. Right, so any of those longer notes can all get vibrato. Give them a little bit more life. There's not going to be a lot of movement, maybe just on those longer notes. That's where you can give it a little bit of movement. So that's our quality work for this movement. And your other part of your homework is going to be to take a look at our next movement. We're actually going to jump to movement 6. So movement 6 will teach us some new techniques. I'm going to give you guys section markers you can copy down into your parts. So here's section A1. Your job is going to be to learn notes, rhythm, and bowings, and get it up to a working tempo. I'll go over all of those in a moment. Here's section A2. And then here's section A3. And then there's one more. It's kind of a longer section, is section A4. It's 4 bars long. So the notes are not difficult. You do go up in the higher positions towards the end. A good working tempo for you guys for a goal would be quarter note equals 60. This is not fast. It's about this tempo. 1 E and a 1 E and a 1. Now that still might be fast for you guys to start with. So maybe when you're doing your metronome work, start in counting in eighth notes. 1 E and a 1 E and then work your way up. So like start with maybe eighth note equals 60, work it up to 120 and then get to quarter 60. But your goal for next week should be something like this. So, which is not too quick, but our full tempo is going to be much faster. And on this piece is kind of the fun part. We get to learn about how to drill special drilling techniques for left-hand velocity technique. Essentially, we're going to get our tempo up next week and learn how to play it like this. So, but first we've got to learn all our notes. Definitely at that speed, it's very important that it's memorized because you don't want to be trying to read music off the page at that speed. So that's it. That's your assignment. Happy practicing. See you guys at the next lesson.